Hello, I am recording this video to let you know my misfortune with a storage facility. This is regarding Handy Storage 16, located 16,749 Southwest 117 Avenue in Miami, Florida 33177. So this is a storage facility full of rodents, completely open to the selling, leaving easily rodents to pass from one storage unit to another or coming from outside directly to your storage unit. In the first days of rental, rodents have already visited my unit. Returning there a few days later, I noticed a bunch of small black balls all over the place on all of my belongings and a very unpleasant, disgusting smell. But at first sight, I didn't realize that it was rodent feces. I just cleaned everything and closed the door. It was on my second visit to the storage when I noticed that the feces were much more and the smell was very unbearable. This is when I realized that rodents were visiting my unit. So I lost a lot of my belongings. I had to throw away dresses, shoes, my children's books, curtains, handbags, etc. So I addressed a message of anger to the administration to let them know what had happened, and they responded telling me that they would fix the problem. But in fact, they didn't do anything about that, and I will tell you why. Because they have a contract that can be described as an unconscionable contract, because they are not responsible for anything that could happen to you, whatever the damage that the customer could have suffered, including damage caused by their own negligence. They cannot be held liable for anything, and this with the customer money in their hands. None of their employees, agents, or any person connected to them under the rental agreement cannot be held responsible for any damage, whatever the harmful fact that the customer could have suffered, because they are not taking responsibility for anything. However, all over the contract, the clauses under which they can hold you, the customer, liable or responsible toward them and claim from him or from her a compensation or legend. So this is a completely imbalanced contract, unconscionable, to be declared as such by the court. This is on the occasion of this dispute I have with them that I decided to take a closer look at the contract, because at the time of making the contract, you don't really have time to read all the clauses, because when you get there, the person just pointed out to you where to put your signature and to add your initials, and everything is done in less than 3 to 4 minutes. Even in the Article 7 of the contract, when they admit that they could have some liability toward the customer in the event that the customer would bring a suit against them for wrongful or illegal disposal of his or her belongings. But there is a subsequent sentence in the same clause that destroys what is previously stipulated. So absolutely in no instance, in those circumstances, they take responsibility for anything that could have happened to you. So with such a contract, it is clear and understandable why they won't take any measure to protect your belongings in the storage. They will even act with negligence, notably by maintaining a building full of rodents, leaving you exposed to dangers of all kinds because they believe that they are shielded by the contract. I am attaching emails that I have exchanged with them and some pictures of the things I lost by rodents in their storage so that you can judge by yourself to see how disgusting that handy storage is to vomit and to be avoided absolutely, to have no kind of business with that rotten business entity. Thank you. I am going to speak now of their contract, which is a completely imbalanced contract where they deny all kind of responsibility toward their tenants while they are getting your money. I have selected four clauses of the contract, which I deem the most scandalous, and you will see why people should refrain from giving their money to that group business. Don't forget, its name is Handy Storage 16, located in Miami. Okay, so I come with the first clause. This clause is about suit or claim a tenant could bring against them for causes including, but they say not limited to, wrongful or illegal sale of their personal belongings stored in the storage facility or for other cause, in which case they agree that their maximum liability to the tenant is $5,000. But what I want to explain here, when you go to court should have the last word. This is the reason why you go to court, to have a ruling. So if court decides that owner has acted correctly in selling tenant's property, or if it decides the other way, whatever the result, so court ruling must prevail. We all know that. But there is a last sentence in the clause that says, let me read that. The sentence says, while they admit that they can be liable for $5,000, up to $5,000. But the sentence says, nothing in this section shall be deemed to create any liability on the part of owner to tenant for any loss or damage to tenant's property, regardless of cause. So, when I read this sentence, it seems that they include this sentence in the contract just in case court would decide against them. So they, as the owner, can still invoke that sentence to claim no liability, even after court ruling, which is completely nonsense for me, because I don't know why this sentence is in the clause. If you go to court, so you should wait for court ruling, and the way court decides, this is the result of the case, so it prevails. You can do anything about that. So now I go to clause 7. This clause says that tenant has the exclusive care, custody, and control of all personal property stored in the rented space. So, I add all property, they say, are stored at tenant's sole risk. Owner and his affiliates are not liable for any loss or damage whatsoever for any cause. When I go to the enumeration, so they enumerate burglary, mysterious disappearance, fire, water damage, mold, mildew, rodent, acts of God, active or passive acts, or omission or negligence of owner or his affiliates. So my concern is, how come owner is not responsible for burglary? Is it because tenant would have control of the security measure at the storage facility? It's no. So they are not responsible for mysterious disappearance, which implies that owner or his affiliates may steal your belongings and not being responsible for that. They are not responsible for fire, water damage, mold, mildew, rodents, etc. And when considering those causes, they are naturally vested in owner's responsibility. They are none of tenant's business because the owner is the one managing the facility and therefore has the responsibility to maintain a secured and clean place free of fire, water damage that could damage tenant's property, mold, mildew, and rodents that can ruin his or her belongings. So tenant has absolutely no control over those things. But in the contract, they put all of them on tenant's responsibility. So when I consider that, it's good to ask yourself why tenant is paying you, because this is precisely why they are paying you. It's because the personal property are valuable to tenant that he or she pays to store them in your facility, but not to lose them by burglary, mysterious disappearance, water damage, mold, mildew, rodents, and other causes that I don't know. So this contract very eloquently explains how careless and I would say inconsiderate that Handy Storage 16 is with the personal belongings of its clients, while it is getting paid to keep them safe. So in no circumstances it deems being responsible for anything toward its client. He even dares to put at the end of the same clause, he even dares to say that his active or passive acts, his omission and negligence do not make him liable for anything that could happen to you or to your belongings. So this is really scandalous. This is scandalous because this simply shows that he treats his customers and their personal belongings in his storage in a completely despicable way. Because what kind of contract is this? So when I go over the contract, all of this can be summarized in a simple sentence. All that matters to them is just your money. They don't give them to you, to your belongings, because this is not their business. All they want from you is only your money. Now, I take a look at Article 9 because there are 4 clauses that are really, really scandalous. This clause itself is about fire or other cause that could have damaged the rented spaces where you store your belongings. So the first sentence at the onset, the first sentence say tenant will have to indemnify and hold harmless the owner from any claim for damages or lost property, and may I add, in the fire which most likely occur by the owner's fault. But the clause doesn't say how the fire would occur or how the fire broke out in the storage. So in that event, owner has, listen to this. In that event, owner has the right to remove the content of your storage and to store it at another place, but it will be done at tenant's sole cost, expenses, without liability for any loss or damage whatsoever for the owner or for any people, any person affiliated to the owner. And the right that owner has to remove the content of your unit So what I understand from this clause is after tenant suffered fire in the rented storage, which has destroyed his or her belongings, she will have or he will have to indemnify and hold the owner harmless from any loss, cost, or expense in connection with owner's goodwill because it has good faith. He decides to remove the remaining stuff that supposedly had not been destroyed in the fire to put them in another place for you, and you will have to indemnify him for that, pay for that. And while the clause doesn't say how the fire broke out in the storage. So now we are here in the presence of people who think they are allowed everything, because it can be assumed that the owner can deliberately set fire to the storage and use this way to extract money from the tenant, because this is what this clause is about. Because if fire broke in the storage and the tenant is not responsible for that, on the contrary, the owner should be liable to the tenant. But it is not what we see in this clause. The tenant, after suffering fire that has destroyed his belongings, will have to indemnify and pay the owner. The last sentence of this clause, the clause 9, is laughable. Let me read this to you. It says, notwithstanding that owner shall not be liable for such occurrences, so meaning the fire, tenant agrees to notify owner immediately upon the occurrence to any injury, damage, or loss suffered by tenant or other person in any of such circumstances. He says that the tenant should inform the owner immediately. But indeed, why should tenant inform owner immediately when owner has no responsibility for any damage tenant would have suffered in the fire? Because if fire broke out in the storage, owner should have already known that. And in the very unlikely event that owner was not aware, so tenant would inform owner so that owner could use this misfortune to claim money from the tenant, either to remove tenant stuff or for any other reason. For any cause whatsoever, fire had broken there. So when I read this clause closely, it is about making money on tenant's misfortune and nothing else. This is what I understand from that clause. And the last clause I go over it, which is the most scandalous of the contract, is the clause number 10. This clause says that owner and all owners affiliated persons are not liable to tenant and tenant affiliated person for any personal injury, death. So I don't go any further with the enumeration because the second one is death. And we all know that death is the ultimate damage that a person can suffer. So let's go to the causes. The causes are always whatsoever, including but not limited to the active or passive acts or omission or negligence of the owner or people affiliated to the owner, things like that. What has retained my attention is the word active. This word in this clause is downright shocking because the owner or one of his affiliated person could have deliberately or accidentally caused death to the tenant or to a person affiliated to the tenant, and they would not be in no way responsible for that. So I ask myself, in which country does people think they are living to put such nonsense clauses in a contract? Which court will endorse such a thing? I don't understand what is happening with those people. For myself, I assume that they perfectly know that such clauses, such unconscionable clauses, cannot resist a court examination. They perfectly know that. But however, it is important to understand that the reason why they put such clauses, they put such clauses in the contract, and they demonstrate to us how careless and inconsiderate that they are. I mean, in this storage 16, how inconsiderate they are, even for the lives of its customers, to say nothing about their personal belongings. Me, I sincerely think that none of their clients so far have submitted those monstrosities to a court examination. And that's why they feel comfortable with that. Because, I don't know, why they think that those clauses are important to put in a contract. Because they are completely unconscionable. There's no court that will assume that. Or they are probably counting on the fact that it will cost a customer time and money to bring a case against them in court. And this is why they have such an unconscionable contract. But to finish this session, I think it is important to inform any prospective customer of Handy Storage 16 of the lamentable condition of their facility. It is full of rodents and all kind of dangers, even for your own life as a customer. And at the time of making the contract, let me tell you what they do. They won't allow you any time to read the content of the contract. They seek to keep you distracted by an unnecessary conversation while they are pointing out to you where to put your signature, your initials, things like that. So everything is done in less than 5 minutes. You sign and you go with the contract. and it is at the time you have a claim against them, or you want to bring a suit in court. This is at the time you realize what you have signed, and this has happened to me, so I'm just informing you so that to avoid doing any kind of business with ND Storage 16. Thank you.